Dragon Silver, Wizard Gold. Book 1 in the Varthien Saga by Kris Sihto. Chapter 1. Meetings, 653 OM Tarandir. Year of the Leaping Rabbit. Pugton. The boy squelched chilly mud through his toes as he squatted between two market stalls. The hustle and bustle of the market went unheard, his concentration unwavering as he gazed in rapt fascination at the earthworm between his feet. It writhed wildly, covered in the thick mud. He had been inspecting the worm for some time now, and it was starting to slow. Suddenly, he started wondering why it was that the worm was flailing about in the first place. Did worms like to flail about? He imagined that their lives underground were fairly boring, really. And then it hit him. It had been raining steadily through the night, and everything was waterlogged. He wondered what it would be like if he were only the size of the worm before him, trapped in sticky mud as far as he could see and unable to get out. With a grimy finger, he reached out and gently smoothed some of the mud from the skin of the worm. There, he whispered, we'll get you sorted. The earthworm coiled its way around the boy's outstretched finger, and immediately the boy moved his other hand under the first to cup his precious cargo. He slowly stood, then looked around for a dry spot of land. A pot of petunias was thrust under his nose by the stall-holder next to him. Small deeds may seem small at first, but so do seeds, a gravelly voice said. Some stay small, others become the foundations for greatness. Your friend can rest here until there is a drier home for him. The boy smiled up at the man in the wide-brimmed leather hat and cloak, and gratefully deposited his charge in the much drier soil of the pot. Within seconds, the worm had tunneled its way down and disappeared. The man's stall was covered in a dazzling array of goods, everything from small trinkets on leather thonging to a massive statue of some form of cat, the like of which he had never seen before and must have taken at least 3 men to lift. Strange dried herbs and flowers lined one edge of the multi-hued tent, hung upside down from a string that ran the length of the wall. A rack of warm-looking cloaks sat towards the front, and a glass-fronted cabinet filled with coloured bottles glinted in the back. The man was standing behind a table on which lay knives, pieces of knotted cord, small bundles of twigs, a box filled with live frogs, and, of course, a potted pink petunia plant. The man himself was nothing much to look at. His ample frame was mostly hidden beneath an oiled leather cloak, which, in conjunction with the hat, made him look rather nondescript and brown. The round face was red and pockmarked and topped with faded ginger hair, which also seemed to infest his square beard and moustache in the places it wasn't white. He propped himself up with a walking stick which seemed to have a lot more stick quality than it had walk quality. In fact, if it weren't for the strangeness of the wares, the boy would have thought this man a simple farmer. Just as he was thinking that he should ask the man about how he had managed to transport the stone cat, he was thumped on the back by a hard fist. "What's with the geese, runt?" shouted Reginald. Reginald was always bad news, especially when he was in a group. Many of the local boys had decided it was better to join forces with the butcher's son rather than risk falling foul of his frequent attacks, and so were often seen in his company. This only seemed to feed his desire to cause trouble. Today he had 3 in tow. The boy steeled himself. A pack this size could only mean he was today's chosen target. "What geese?" "I think you're turning a bit blind there, Reginald," the boy said, choosing to risk all to save himself from looking weak. Weakness was bad. It only encouraged Reginald to pick more often. Reginald looked slightly confused for a second, then his face cleared and he actually laughed. "Not geese, idiot, geese. As in geezer, this old fart." The boy took a deep breath through his nose. "Nope," he said with a confidence he didn't feel inside. "That's not the smell of fart. All I smell is rain." The boys in Reginald's party were starting to titter softly as Reginald's face clouded in confusion again. Then a slight chuckle escaped the lips of the onlooking marketeer, and all confusion was gone. The butcher's boy changed his focus to the adult, a sneer on his face. You, old fart. I mean you. I know everyone in town and you're not from here. That means you're from somewhere else. He said this as if it were a revelation to the world. That means you're not from here. My Da says people like you are no good. My Da says people like you are not worth a pinch. My Da says people like you are better off far away and never setting foot in town, and if it were up to him, he'd hunt the lot of you. Your Da says a lot of things about people he's never met and never will, doesn't he? The man replied calmly. Nevertheless, I'm not from somewhere else. I live barely an hour's ride from here, and I know a good deal more about the goings-on in this town than Reginald Cutler, the butcher's son, is likely to. Reginald blanched a little at being identified so easily. And it's high time you filled your head with a lot more than my Da said. The bully looked at his group uneasily, then turned his attention to the stock-laden table. What are you? Some sort of weirdo who runs around the forest eating berries and living in trees. You're trying to sell useless bits of rope and bundles of twigs. If I wanted twigs, I could pick them up off the ground myself. He grabbed one of the offending bundles from the table. I wouldn't untie that if I were you, warned the amused-looking man with a grin on his face. In response, Reginald looked directly into the man's eyes and pulled on the red ribbon holding the sticks together. It fell away from the bundle, and for a count of 2 there was triumph in his eyes. Then suddenly, whoosh! The bundle exploded into fire in Reginald's hands. Reginald hurled them from his grasp in surprise, and for a moment all was silent except for the slight hiss as each stick fell to the ground and doused itself in the wetness. Then it was his turn to explode. What do you mean by that? Trying to set me on fire? You could have gotten me killed, you moron. I'll tell my Da on you. That's quite all right. Please do as either you or he will be paying for that merchandise. 2 crowns for a bundle of 60 fire starters. I'm sure your father will be most pleased to be so far out of pocket. Reginald flushed red, turned and ran, his cronies laughing at his fleeing back. They were, after all, here for the show and nothing more. And I'll catch up with him whether you tell him or not, finished the man quietly. Now, he turned his attention back to the other boys. What can I do for you all? But all the boys acted as if they couldn't see the tent, or even recall that it was here. They wandered over to the fishing rods they'd piled against the wall of a nearby house, chatting about how poorly their fishing had gone that morning. All bar one, the first, the boy with the worm who was studying the other bundles of sticks closely. The man smiled. So, young man, is there anything I can do for you? He repeated. The boy looked up with an intense expression on his face. How do they work? He demanded. Oh, that's quite simple. You pull one from the bundle and it lights. No real difficulty in it. You just need to make certain the ribbon remains. No, grumbled the boy. How do they work? How do they light? Even simpler, it's magic. The boy seemed to be becoming quite agitated now. No. How do they work? There's got to be some method that makes them like they are. They don't just fall off a tree like that. Why do adults always do this? They tell you it's magic, but they don't tell you how. Don't you know? Of course I know, said the man. I'm a wizard. I made them. He thought for a second, then continued. The magic is not in the sticks. The magic is in the ribbon. A lot of things have potential to be something bigger than they are. Sticks have potential to burn. The ribbon is a catalyst to release that potential, but you limit what it does by tying a knot in it, because knots are powerful binding magic. When your pudgy friend untied that knot, it released all the energy, rather than just a little. The boy thought about that for a little bit. Why did all the boys go away? He asked. They knew you were here. Then they just sort of forgot. It was weird. Oh, it happens, said the wizard nonchalantly. Occasionally something will break the geese on the tent and children get through. Not often, though. You were invited in, which I suppose is why you can still see me, but most don't ever see my tent until they're majority. when they have the money to pay for what they break. I'm not quite certain of the details of the particular spell. It's not one of mine, see? He explained. Back in my youth, I got it off a sorcerer who had a rather nasty run-in with a salamander shortly afterward. He never did tell me the trick. I was just a hedge mage back then. I lacked the deeper understanding I have now. What's the difference, asked the boy, between a wizard and all that other stuff? The wizard took a deep breath and frowned. I suppose you're going to keep asking me all manner of questions, aren't you? The boy nodded. Well then, you'd better sit down. There's a lot to answer, and that doesn't happen quickly. The wizard gestured to a pair of chairs that the boy hadn't noticed earlier. The boy sat, and for the next few hours the wizard explained about the different types of magic and the way different people used it. Every now and then someone would stop to buy something, and the wizard would rise to speak to them, addressing each by his or her name and asking them about their children, their pets, their jobs. The boy marvelled each time that someone so familiar with the town and its residents could be completely unknown to him, who had spent his entire 10 years of existence within the confines of its limited number of streets. The people who visited the stall didn't seem to see the boy, however, much in the same way as the boys before had lost the ability to see the stall or its inhabitant. Not, that is, until late in the afternoon when his mother came flouncing by. "Good afternoon, Felicity," the man called out politely. The boy's mother turned with an expression the boy had never seen on his mother's face before. "Normie, darling," she cried. "Oh, it's been simply ages. I missed you." Then she spotted the boy in the background, and her face took on a look of thunder. You little brat, where have you been hiding? I've been looking for you everywhere." She turned again to the wizard. "What's he been up to? He hasn't nicked anything, has he?" "No, Felicity," he said. "He and I have just been having a little chat." She turned once again to the boy. "You've been bugging him, haven't you? You and your infernal questions. How many times have I told you?" The man cut her off with a hasty, "No, wait, it's okay. He's been quite good. He's a credit to you." At this, the boy's mother stopped fuming at the boy and turned her attention back to the man with a beam on her face. "Well, that's not so bad then, is it?" she said, almost to herself. The wizard continued, "I actually wanted to speak to you about your son. He's quite bright, and I think he'd do well in my employ." For once, Felicity seemed at a loss for words. She stared at the man, her mouth half open, small sounds of half-formed words popping from her in small gasps. "I would, of course, reimburse the both of you for your troubles. I know that since the death of your husband, the boy has been of great assistance to you, but I'm sure that 20 crowns a month would be sufficient." 20, she gasped out. 20 crowns was a fortune, and her head started filling with dreams of avarice. 5 for your troubles, and 15 as wages for the boy, to be set aside by you for his majority. I will clothe and feed him, which will lessen the financial burden upon your shoulders. He will, of course, live with me, as my tower is too far away for idle wandering to and from. However, you will be welcome to visit as often as you find convenient. Terms of employment will be renegotiated once the boy reaches his majority in 8 years. The boy thought. 5 crowns a month was 10 times what his mother was making with her small embroidery store, and more than enough to keep her comfortable. "I think it's a good deal, Mum," he said. She was already nodding in agreement, barely noting her child's assent. She had married and given birth young, and her husband had died while she was still pregnant. The 10 years since had been years of stolen youth, shackled, she had thought at times, by the child she had borne. She was not yet 30 and longed for the freedom to act like a girl again. "The boy's yours," she blurted out. 20 crowns a month. "Well, I see we're all in agreement," said the wizard with a smile on his face. He pulled a strange coin from his pocket. "This is a wizard contract," he stated, putting the coin to his lips and repeating the terms he had already given. He placed it on the table. "We each place a finger on the coin to give our assent to the terms." The boy immediately placed his finger on the coin. The wizard looked at Felicity, who seemed hesitant. Tales abounded of wizard contracts forfeited. The tales were never pretty. Then the thought of the money rallied her, and she touched the coin gingerly, as if it were something slimy and unpleasant. The wizard placed his finger last upon the coin. Nothing momentous happened, and Felicity let out a loud breath and relaxed. Her hand fell away from the coin. "So, what happens now?" asked the child, not certain what to do with his finger now it was on the coin. The wizard winked and picked up the coin from the table. "Hold out your hand, boy," he commanded. The boy did as he was told, and the wizard clasped his forearm firmly. "Don't worry, this won't hurt a bit," he said softly, and pressed the coin to the boy's wrist. Light flared from the coin, and the boy gasped in surprise as the golden disc sank painlessly into his skin. After about a minute, it had become entirely covered with skin, and a red-brown tattoo formed, replicating the coin that lay underneath. The wizard looked at Felicity. "Your son's flesh will be marked by our agreement until his 18th birthday, at which time the agreement is negated. If anyone fails to uphold their end of the bargain, they pay in flesh also. It's different from contract to contract. The magic decides which way it will flow, but it's generally not pleasant. Let's all steer clear of that, shall we?" Then he turned to the boy. "Well, Peter, it's getting on. Let's get packing. It's time to go home."